Let me just say good morning to everyone. We are very excited today because today we're releasing our transition report. And as I've always said, it's important to be inclusive as it relates to coming up with ideas and how you want to move the city forward. Everybody knows that I have a vision for Baltimore, one, making it the greatest city in America. And we know that the only way that that happens is that we tackle our problems head on. And that one of the things that this city has not done very well for itself is to promote itself. And so we're working on that. Thank you, Bill. And we've got a lot of work to do. But we know that the citizens of Baltimore expect us to do better and to be greater at at what we put forth to them. And the other thing that I must always remember to tell folks is that oftentimes when new mayors take office, you want to throw out everything and start all over. You know, sometimes you end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But I'm a true believer that what you do is you build on what others have done. And having learned from some of the best, I know that's Jim. I don't even have to turn. I don't even have to turn around. I know it's Jim Smith. I know it is. I want to first thank my team. Tisha Edwards, who's my chief of staff, is with us. Pete Hammond, my chief of operations, and my good friend Jim Smith. And look, I don't even have to, I know where he is, okay? Who is chief of strategic alliances. And because we began meeting early, because we knew that if we put the right people around us and had thought leaders that you see standing behind me working together, that we will come up with some solutions to the problems that Baltimore is facing. And let me also say that we've heard from others, whether it is the OSI report that we do have, and that much of what you will read today, and I invite you all to read the report thoroughly, are suggestions, ideas, a real deep dive into certain areas that we think are extremely necessary. But we will take all of these ideas, synthesize them, and use them as a part of our vision to move our city forward. The transition reports included recommendations on key areas like economic development and employment, transportation. I was having a conversation this morning with about 200 executives from Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and surrounding jurisdiction. They told me it was the largest attendance they've ever had, and we talked about transportation needs for people who live in our city. I talked to them about a conversation that I had with David Hillman, for example, who has hotels and a development out in Anne Arundel County, and he says, you know, 60% of the workers here live in Baltimore City. But here's what happens. They get tired because it takes 2.5 hours to travel by public transportation to a drive that would take us, what, about 20, 25 minutes to get there? So part of what we're thinking about when we think about transportation, and this requires coordination with cities, state, and even the federal government, to make sure that we have resources that start transportation in downtown Baltimore, that goes to the airport, that goes to Arundel Mills Mall, into the Arundel Park area, because we have so many opportunities for job creation, job opportunities, and we want to make sure that Baltimoreans get the opportunity to continue to work. Healthy neighborhoods was among the areas that we looked closely at. And when I say healthy neighborhoods, what am I talking about? I'm not talking about just picking up the trash. I'm talking about the cleanliness of the neighborhood as it relates to making sure that we don't have food deserts. That's part of a healthy neighborhood. Making sure we have sit-down restaurants, making sure we have entertainment in those areas. We all shouldn't have to travel just to one part of the city to get what we think that we need. And so that's a part of being a healthy neighborhood. Public safety and policing. You all know that since we are a city that currently is, looked at by the DOJ, a consent decree that has been signed and it's in the court's hands currently, and we're hoping that everything moves forward. There is an opportunity, I just want to remind the public that they have until March the 7th to make public comments on what we've put forward. And I want you all to understand that when we looked at this, that I chaired criminal justice reform for the state of Maryland. So being a part of the negotiations was really important for me, and I thank my team, because my team worked 14 hours a day at least, and I was in on some of those conversations at 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember talking to David Ralph, our city solicitor, one time, and he says, I'll get back to you. So I'm waiting, so about 1:30 in the morning, I call him, he's like, what are you doing still up? I said, I'm waiting for you to get back to me. I mean, but that's the kind of dedication that took place in that report, and you all know that I went before the courts to have a conversation around that because they wanted to make sure that I understood what the obligation of being under a consent decree means, and I'm completely understanding of what that means. But what I also wanted to make sure is that in that consent decree, the Baltimore City got credit for some of the things that we did in criminal justice reform around putting body cameras on our police officers. So to have that kind of recommendation and having already done it, to make sure that we got credit for it was important. And so we did those kinds of things. So we're waiting to see what happens with that. Education and youth development, you all know that that is a priority for us as it relates to how we make sure that our children are educated at their earliest age. You know, I'm a big proponent of Judy Centers, as you well know, because Judy Centers start educating our children at 6 weeks of age. It helps to change the character of their behavior. Remembering and understanding the content of your city, you know, whether it is babies raising babies or babies who come from drug-addicted parents or parents who just want the best for their children and send them to school every single day like any other parent. We have a responsibility to make sure that that happens. And so you all know that at the state level, we've put in legislation asking for control of appointments to the school board. That doesn't mean we take over the school system. That means that we make sure that the people who sit on that school board understand the importance of finances, education, making sure that our children have quality supplies and technology and all of the things that will allow them to be the greatest students that they can be and to become leaders in our city. And we understand that the fastest two growing populations in our city, 18 to 34, 55 years of age and older, we've got to take care of those populations. But at the same time, we want those who are 34 to 53 to stay in our city. That means better schools, because what happens is people choose to move elsewhere because they don't feel that we have great schools, even though we do. And I think Baltimore does a poor job of telling its own story. I had a question this morning around recreation, and I asked the woman, I said, have you been to the new C.C. Jackson Recreation Center? She said, no. I said, have you been to the new Under Armour one on Fayette Street? The C.C. Jackson one is up on Park Heights. She said, no. Have you been to the new field over that the James Mosier League is getting? She said, no. People don't know what we have in our city, and we have a responsibility to share and tell our story. I said last night, and I said this morning, I want folks to get it right. I know BAL is tired of me calling them up because there was a report that Catherine Pugh said that she was going to give $200 million to the school system, and we need her to make good on her promise. I said the advocates earlier asked me to make good on the promise as it relates to the DOJ report. The average DOJ report, you all, takes 14 months to get done. In Ferguson, with 50 police officers, it took 13 months. In New Orleans, with half the officers that we had, it took 14 months. But be clear, because the information is up on the website, what Catherine Pugh said is after examining the budget, that we would look at what other and recognizing what other jurisdictions do. 35% of their budgets go, 35 to 50% in our surrounding counties go to the public school system. We currently do about 20%. I said, written, my goal is to get to 20 to 35% over the next 4 years. Now, my goal for losing weight this year is about 25 pounds. Now, if I get to 10, thumbs up, I'm good, okay? So I want people to understand the difference between a goal and a dollar amount, because I didn't do that. But we also talk about the Baltimore Development Corporation. And the reason that was important is because we have slotted small business development and minority business in the Baltimore Development Corporation. And we want to separate them. And so we will appoint someone to head minority and small business in our city. And that's a part of the recommendation here. We want the development BDC to continue to focus on making sure that the businesses that are here stay here, that we expand opportunities for growth for all businesses in our city, small and large businesses. We understand that in our city, for example, that the tourism trade is among the highest economic generator in our city, along with healthcare. So we've got to make sure that we have great downtowns, but we've got to make sure we have great neighborhoods as well. And so that's why that's important. One of the recommendations that you'll hear is around permitting. And I want to thank my Chief Operating Officer, Pugh, because he got on that early. The permitting process was a complaint by many of those trying to do business in our city. We've streamlined it. It is now online. So thank you for the recommendation transition team. We've already done it. And so we're excited about it. And sanitation. Cleanliness of the city is essential. I'm one of those mayors who gets out of the car, who stops, who jumps in, walks into a business and says, why is this trash sitting out here? Why don't we have trash cans at bus stops or benches or wherever? Neighborhoods need to be clean, and we also need to make sure that they are clean. That's our responsibility. Many of you know that my staff's introduction to me was to go on a bus tour because I needed them to see what I see every day. I don't go home by Jones Falls Expressway. I ride through neighborhoods throughout the city because I want folks to understand what can be done, what should be done, where we're lacking and where we're not lacking, and where we need to put some of our resources, like coming up Pennsylvania Avenue and looking at a field on right above Dolphin Street that is slanted. But yet, if you've been there at any particular time during the summer, families, individuals in those neighborhoods pull out their lawn chairs. They go over there. They play football. They play basketball. They play baseball on that field, slanted. They mark it with their own cones. We can do better than that, and we will. So again, I'm really thankful for the recommendations that have been made, the work that has been done, the collaboration. Many of the committees I got to visit. Some of them I did not. But again, I know that they understood the vision that I set forth for moving our city forward and working with my team. And again, I look forward to implementing many of the suggestions that were made, but more importantly, I look forward to us continuing to collaborate and work with leaders throughout our city to make Baltimore the greatest city it can be. Thank you. Bill, did you want to share some more?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Come to the mic.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is another great day for our city. I'm Bill McCarthy. I chaired the Economic Development and Employment Task Force for this transition team with Sheena Parker as my vice chair. To give you an understanding of the work and collaboration that went into this process, we have a committee of 30 people. We met every week since the transition committee was announced. It was in addition from the collaboration and expertise in that room, we heard from speakers and professionals both locally, statewide, and nationally to come up with the best ideas to make recommendations to the mayor. We really focused on 4 areas: workforce development and youth employment, retail development in neighborhoods, very critical for our city, the expansion, retention, and acquisition of new businesses to Baltimore as a whole, and then arts and culture as economic development. The mayor is amazing in the fact that of all those recommendations are all actionable. Some are immediate, some are short or near term, others are a little bit longer term. But the mayor and her team have actually begun to implement many of those, particularly in areas of workforce development and youth employment. So anticipating, you know, when you come in and you present to the mayor the interim report, this is where we're going, and she goes, we're doing this. I said, I guess we're in the right place.
Right.
But with that, thank you very much. It was an honor
Bill.
to do this.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Scott Spencer, and I happen to be the co-chair of the Youth Education Committee, along with Stacey Ulrich, who's also here with us. Madam Mayor, first of all, thank you for appointing the teams that you did. In our team in Youth and Education, we had about 24 folks who were, while we all came from different fields and had, roles and, somewhat respected roles, we were there as citizens. And I think it was very important to understand that, folks came to the table and rolled up their sleeves and met regularly, sometimes in the night, sometimes in the weekend. We met with young people, but we did it because we care about our city. And we know that you're committed and your compassion and your care for the city sort of is reflective in the team that you selected. and the way that we were able to really think about recommendations. Just a little bit more background on what Bill was talking about. There were a couple of opportunities where the committee chairs actually got to meet with the mayor. And here's where the commitment comes in, because it was not just a, we meet, she hears, and we go away, but she challenged us to think harder, she challenged us to think deeper, and she challenged us to commit ourselves and really think about how we could be further committed to making sure that the city goes forward so that our youth, our young people, have the opportunity to go to school, do well, graduate from high school, have career options, and really succeed so that they can be the citizens, the leaders of tomorrow. So I just want to thank you. I want to thank everybody else who was on the team, and particularly my chair, who was just an amazing person. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So all of you all will leave here. This is your weekend assignment. Read it thoroughly, share it, write about it, report about it, but thank you all. And again, to my transition team leadership, I can't thank you all enough for all the work and all the time. They didn't get paid. They did it because they believe in Baltimore. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Any questions about the transition? Madam Mayor, you said that part of the report is that Baltimore didn't promote itself very well and tell its own story. Do you feel that the city does more apologizing than promoting?
No, I just believe that you're not helping us to tell our story. I only saw one report on that young man who's just a great example of what young people should know in terms of learning the 911 system. I haven't seen anybody do a report on the C.C. Jackson Recreation Center right there in Park Heights, or the new James Mosier League Field. I haven't seen anything about that. So and that's why we're taking an extra step with our own station, Channel 25, so we can tell our story. And then maybe you'll pick up on it.
You talked about workforce development and jobs for young people. It feels like summer outside. Summer's going to be...
It sure does. Woo.
Can you reveal any plans for what's coming?
Well, let me just say 11,000 young people have already applied for jobs this summer. And here's what I've said to the business community. I don't need you to just throw us money. I need you to take those young people inside your organizations. I want them to see beyond the 4 square block radius in which they live. I told the GBC, and I said it this morning at the economic group that I spoke to, that one of my greatest memories of covering the Miami riots was not the burned out buildings. It was the 11-year-old that was standing beside me, that when I looked down at him and I looked into his eyes, he said, "I have no place to work now." If we don't give our young people the experience of companies and corporations and industry, they can't see they don't learn how to be a doctor. They don't learn how to be a lawyer. They don't learn how to be a scientist or a technician or somebody who's thorough in biotechnology, or to be a developer. So that will be a part of that. It's going to be very energetic. One of the things that we're also talking about, and which is why we announced our jobs program for our young people early. We didn't wait till May. We started talking to companies and corporations every chance we get around that, is because we know that we've got children who not only want to work, but have to work. Some of them are breadwinners. Some of them are homeless. Some of them have drug-addicted parents, but still, they have the capacity and the capability to become whatever they want to be. Some folks have to be given direction and shown the opportunities. So you'll hear more about it.
Madam Mayor, regarding the separation of minority and women-owned businesses from BDC's oversight, I guess would be the correct word, is this going to be...
No, it doesn't separate them from oversight, because the person who will run that will also be a member of the BDC board.
So this will not be a separate agency that will be...
No, remember, the city has a minority business enterprise. See, I think we have too many organizations doing the same thing or with similar missions. So bringing that under one roof, I think, is essential, so that we're not duplicating services and that we are actually more efficient at what we do, and that we're helping more people than we currently are.
So just so I'm clear, because I'm a little bit slow here. So this is going to be, you're adding the oversight then for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're phasing out the old office for minority business
No.
development? It would be in addition to?
Yes, it'll be, what will happen is, with our small business office, and we're still working on all of this. We know we have a small business resource center, we have the SBA's program, we have MBE, WBE programs, all of them on the same goal and mission. So our goal is to create one entity that has a complete focus on that, but not preclude them from the opportunities of BDC, which is why that person will also sit on the board and have input with the Baltimore Development Corporation.
What's the latest on housing and what this transition report says for the separation of those agencies?
Exciting, they agree. And we have several people from around the country who've applied. We've got some great people here that have applied. We hope to be making some decisions probably within the next 30 to 45 days. At least they'll begin to be vetted, and I'll get to choose from among the best, probably the last 3 candidates for each area.
In terms of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you're still moving down the path of making sure that these are clear, distinct agencies?
Yeah, and I made it very clear that when I was briefed by the Obama administration, one of the things they talked about, and you all can look it up, in every major city, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Boston, you name it, most cities, those are separate agencies. And at the time that these were brought together, I think it was under Schaefer. How many years ago was that? Time changes things.
Recreation
Mhm.
and grocery stores, more grocery stores in neighborhoods. What are some of the ideas you guys have bounced around? Because it sounds like you're into taking in all kinds of different.
Well, when we talk about community development, I think oftentimes people just think housing. And, for example, when we lured ShopRite to Liberty Heights Avenue, should we not have done similar to what we did in some other parts of the city, looked at the retail that was across that corridor and said, well, what would be complementary to ShopRite that would be more attractive to this community? Should we not have invested in that area or lured somebody to that area to make sure that, for example, the theater directly across the street from it burnt out? It's still burnt out. Should not we have addressed that? And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. One of the things that I love about Mondawmin is the community said, we don't want another fast food. Not that we have anything against fast foods. Not that we have anything against fast foods, but they said, we have fast food in Mondawmin. We want a sit-down restaurant. And they held out, and they held out, and I can tell you because I was a state senator representing that district, every fast food industry approached me. Sorry, that's not what they're interested in. They want a sit-down restaurant. And people did not believe that a Starbucks could be in that area. And the Target wouldn't survive, nor would the Marshalls. And it is still one of the highest grossing malls in the area. They held out and they got a sit-down restaurant. I'm saying that what we do in Canton, we can do in Belvedere Square, we can do in Park Heights, we can do in communities that have been neglected for decades, and that's the mission we're on.
All right, let's get the ugly out of the way.
Yes.
9 people shot yesterday in Baltimore City.
So I addressed that this morning. We have a problem. We have a problem of escalation of violence. When I think about the young lady who was killed, who, I don't know how she was killed, I just know that she was beaten, wrapped up, and thrown away. When I think about the person who walked into a barbershop and pointed a gun and shot somebody in their head, I've said the killings have to stop. The de-escalation of violence has to stop. The way we are dealing with violence because somebody doesn't do what you want them to do, or somebody didn't do what you asked them to do, or somebody just violated what you thought they should have done is out of control. And I said that this morning, that you cannot expect police to solve this problem by themselves. We hire them to protect and serve, but you can't ask a police officer to stand in the middle of a shooting. We just saw 2 police officers who got killed in Washington, D.C. last night. So we've got to work on the problem. Here's the other issue. 76,000 people unemployed in your city is a problem. It's warm outside. People don't have enough to do. Drugs trade is up across the country. Unemployment high, drug trade up, homelessness existing, and we're taking care of more people in our city than any other jurisdiction in the state. We have more methadone clinics than all the jurisdictions put together in the state. We have more people occupying our shelters that are not from our city, and I think I mentioned this to you all before, that when that cold snap came, I decided to visit the shelters. And it's not that the shelters are dirty, they're also being occupied by other people. I walked in the shelter and somebody said, oh, there's the mayor, there's the mayor. And so lady said, well, I don't know her. So I walked over, I said, well, hi, I am the mayor of Baltimore. She said, I'm from DC. We don't turn people away based on where you're from. We service them. We don't turn people away from drug treatment because of where they're from. We service them. And so there's got to be some negotiating at the state level and with my counterparts. Had a wonderful conversation with Anne Arundel County Executive Shue about how we negotiate working together on some of these issues. Because this is not just a Baltimore problem. Many of the problems that face our state end up here. And so there's got to be some shared responsibility and some conversations at the state level about additional resources. We do have legislation at the state level around gun legislation, getting guns off of the streets of our city. But I don't know if you were in Annapolis doing the gun legislation, what was that, 2 years ago, where they were up till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, because those who believe that they have the right to carry guns are going to be advocating just as much to keep guns as those of us who advocate to take them off the streets. But we've got to get them off the streets of our city. I had a call to action around this violence, and it was in preparation of a larger meeting about what we should do. I tell you that it's not just the gun violence occurring, it's the impact that it has on our community and our young people. For example, in other jurisdictions around the nation, that if there's gun violence, you bring in the psychologist, you bring in the psychiatrist, because you want to make sure the children are okay. And during this Black History Month, I spoke to a 3rd grade class, and one of the questions from one of the young people is, how are you going to keep us safe? That's concerning. So when people talk about why Baltimore City Public Schools need so much, besides being lead paint poison, besides watching the victims of crime and hearing it on the news every day that somebody's being killed, it's creating fear in their minds. But we want them to achieve at the same level as somebody living in an isolated community where they don't even experience that kind of violence. We have a role and a responsibility to make sure that they're taken care of. In a city that is currently this violent, those psychologists and so forth should be in our schools. That's resources that we need to take care of our children.
To that end, I know you've said that there's going to be a big announcement coming on Monday.
And I'm not going to give you any hints at all.
No preview.
None. No preview.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, the Pimlico study is supposed to come out at some point today. Have you been briefed on that
I
at all?
have.
What are your expectations for the track? And can you comment at all about your thoughts on the report?
I think one of my favorite lines in the report says something like, it talks about how much it's going to cost to revamp the track, but there's nothing in there that should preclude Baltimore for having the Preakness remain in Baltimore. We're going to have to be as committed to the economic development of the track as we have been to other areas of our city. The track just happens to be in a part of the city that is an urgent need of development. And so what you should know is that we do get casino impact funds. And so last night I was up in Park Heights, and I'm not sure everybody was happy, but what I shared with them is that I have sat on the Park Heights Development Authority, and I announced last year that the corridor of Park Heights must be fixed. We have 140 some odd boarded up houses on Park Heights. So what must we do? And I said last night that 85% of the money is going to go to that corridor, and that we're going to create incentives for people to live there, but we're also going to create incentives to repair those homes. We got to bring about the change that needs to happen. We are one of the jewels in the Triple Crown. That's major. We can't get that publicity anywhere. We couldn't buy it. We couldn't pay for the focus that it does on Baltimore. It is an opportunity to showcase our city, to showcase it in a bright light. So I'm very optimistic about the report. It will call for public-private partnerships and investment in the track, and we're going to do whatever is necessary because it creates jobs and opportunities, especially for people who live in that neighborhood. We will do everything we can to assure that the Preakness stays in Baltimore.
Is there a figure that you'd like to throw out there as to how much you think could be invested?
I heard something like 300 million. All right, you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.